Good morning, students. So today we are going to start our next topic, and that is a recombinant DNA technology. And what are the various steps that we used in this technology, which is known as recombinant DNA technology or genetic engine. Student, before this, I have explained you about the features of the cloning vectors, what kind of vectors we can use for genetic engineering, and we have also learned about the technique of biotechnology, that how it works for human welfare. So in today's lecture I am going to tell you about the various steps that we used in the technique of recombinant DNA technology. Students, these steps are: number one, isolation of the DNA, because we have to find our gene of interest. So for this purpose, we have to search for a donor organism from which we isolate this DNA of interest or your gene of interest. So our first step is isolation of DNA. When we isolate our alien piece of DNA, then that alien piece of DNA as well as the plasmid vector or plasmid DNA in which we are going to insert this alien piece, both of these, they are cut or they are fragmented with the help of special class of enzymes which are known as restriction endonucleases. As I have already told you that these restriction endonucleases, they are popularly known as molecular scissors. Okay, student, when we have done the fragmentation with the help of this restriction endonuclease enzyme, then our next step is that we have obtained so many DNA fragments, and later we have to isolate these DNA fragments, whether it may be of the plasmid DNA or it may be of the alien DNA. And you know very well, for this purpose we have used one technique, and that technique is agarose gel electrophoresis. Right, it is a kind of electrophoresis that is done on a agarose gel bed in a machine. I have already explained the working of this machine, that how it is quite helpful in separation of the various DNA fragments. Okay, student, fourth step is ligation of the DNA fragment into the vector so that a recombinant DNA can be created. You know very well, both of these alien piece of DNA as well as the plasmid DNA, they have sticky ends, and these sticky ends, when they come in contact with each other, they form hydrogen bonds. And later we add the enzyme DNA ligase. So this DNA ligase, it sealed the sticky ends of both the alien piece of DNA as well as the plasmid. Okay, student, in this way we obtain the recombinant DNA. Now the next step is transferring the recombinant DNA into the host. You know very well that the host organism never becomes ready to accept this foreign DNA, which is the recombinant DNA. So we have to make the host competent. We have to make the host ready to accept this foreign DNA. And in yesterday's lecture, I have discussed the various methods by which we make the host competent or make the host ready to accept the foreign DNA. You know it very well. I will explain it again. And the last step is we have to culture these host cells in which our recombinant DNA enters into a medium on a large scale so that we obtain the large quantities of our desired proteins. Okay, student, last step here is the extraction of the desired product. When we have done the gene cloning or the cloning of our DNA of interest, then the next step is that we have to extract our desired product, which may be any antibiotic or drug, or maybe some agrochemical, or maybe some enzyme or microbes. It may be any of the desired product we extracted from the host cells in which we have done the cloning, and later we launched it in the market. And the last step is known as the downstream processing, which involves purification, separation, clinical testing, or various types of testing, and the launching of this product into the market. Okay, now we are going to study each of these steps one by one. So first step is isolation of the genetic material. So here I am talking about DNA, which is the genetic material. You know very well, first of all, we have to select a donor organism. from which we have to isolate our DNA of interest or our gene of interest. So student, you know that the DNA, it is not present in an isolated form. This DNA, it is actually enclosed within the membranes of the cell. The cell may be of any kind. It may be plant cell, animal cell, or bacterial cell. So first of all, we have to break these membranes. We have to break the cell so that we can isolate the DNA. But still then, the DNA is not alone. This DNA is with some other macromolecules. It may be RNA, it may be proteins, polysaccharides, or some lipid molecules. So this can be done by making use of various type of enzymes that can digest the compounds that are present in the composition of cell membranes or cell walls. So for this purpose, if we are using the bacterial cell, so here you know that the bacterial membrane, it is rich in lipids. So for digestion of this lipid, we have used the enzyme lysozymes. And if our cell is a plant cell, then for this purpose, we have used the enzyme cellulase because it digests the cellulose that is present in the plant cell wall. And if we have some fungal cell, in that fungal cells, to isolate the DNA, we have to use the enzyme chitinase. So these chitinase, they can easily digest the fungal cellulose, which is chitin, and that is present in the cell wall of the fungus. Yes, student, again continuing with the isolation of the DNA, I want to tell you that this DNA is still not alone. It is intertwined with some high dimension molecular masses or molecular weight proteins, and these are known as the histones, because you know that the DNA molecule, it is negatively charged, so it is intertwined with some positively charged histones. So in order to isolate the DNA, we have to remove these histone proteins, and for this purpose we have used some enzymes, proteases, which can easily digest these histone proteins. Okay, students, sometimes the residues in the form of RNA molecule, it is also present in the DNA. So for the digestion of these RNA molecules, we can use the enzyme RNases. So after doing all of these appropriate treatments, we become successful in isolating our DNA. Suppose you are doing the entire process in laboratory in a beaker, then one thing you must take care, whenever you want to isolate this purified DNA after the digestion of the various components that are present in the DNA, then you have to make use of chilled ethanol here. And you have to drop this chilled ethanol from the side wall of the beaker so that it can slowly moves into the solution. And if you do the process in this way, then this ethanol solution, it forms a separate layer over the suspension of the purified DNA. So in this way, when you leave the beaker for 15 to 20 minutes, then what happens? Fine threads of the DNA, it comes over the surface, it floats over the surface, and very soon these fine threads, they later form the network of threads. And by using a small capillary tube, you can isolate this purified DNA. And this process, it is known as a spooling. Yes, student, here I have shown the picture of spooling with the help of a small capillary tube. If you have done the experiment in a test tube, then you can isolate these DNA threads which are floating over the surface of chilled ethanol, and this process, it is known as spooling. Yes, student, after isolation of the DNA, our next step is cutting of the DNA at specific location. And you know very well, for the cutting of the DNA, whether it is a plasmid DNA or it is an alien piece of DNA or foreign DNA, you always make use of the enzymes restriction endonucleases. These are popularly known as molecular scissors. So there is a unique way of functioning of these restriction endonuclease enzymes. You know that these restriction endonuclease, whenever they move or inspect over the DNA segment, they always identified special type of recognition sequences, and they are known as the palindromic sequences. So after finding their respective palindromic sequences, they cut the DNA segment from within. So we have to first repeat the process with the help of restriction endonuclease, first with this alien piece of DNA, and later we do the same process for the plasmid DNA as well. One thing that you must remember in your mind, that always we use the same type of restriction endonuclease for cutting off both the alien piece of DNA and the plasmid DNA, so that uniformity can be maintained. Okay, student, once we have done the cutting with the help of restriction endonuclease, then the next step is the isolation of these cut fragments, whether it may be of plasmid DNA or alien DNA. And you know, for this purpose, we use agarose gel electrophoresis. It is a kind of a machine in the form of a container having two terminals, positive and negative terminal. We pour the agarose gel over this container, and first the gel is in the form of a liquid, and after coming in contact with room temperature, this gel solidify, and on the left hand side of this container small pits are there, which are known as bells. So we pour our suspension that contains different fragments in these respective bells, and we attach the negative terminal where we pour the DNA to the battery, and similarly we also attach the positive terminal with the battery. When you supply electricity, you see the movement of DNA fragments, and because of the sieving effect that is shown by the agarose gel. So what you observe, that the lighter fragments or the fragments of lower density, they move fast over the agarose gel, followed by the larger or the bulky fragments. So after this, with the help of a knife, you cut the respective logs from the agarose bed, and in this way you have obtained so many fragments of the alien DNA, as well as if we repeat the process for the plasmid DNA too, we can also obtain the similar logs for the plasmid DNA as well. Okay, students, so in this way, after joining these alien piece of DNA with their respective plasmid vectors, we obtained the recombinant DNA. Okay, student, here I have shown you the agarose gel electrophoresis apparatus, and this apparatus is generally used for the separation of the fragments of alien piece of DNA as well as a plasmid DNA. And later on, for constructing your recombinant DNA, as you know that sticky ends are created in the alien DNA as well as the plasmid DNA when it is cut by the same restriction endonuclease. Then we add DNA ligase enzyme in the suspension. So this DNA ligase enzyme, it sealed the sticky ends of both plasmid and alien piece of DNA, and in this way we construct our recombinant DNA. Yes, students, the third very important step is amplification of the gene of interest using a special technique, and that is known as PCR. Here the term PCR stands for polymerase chain reaction, students. So here I want to tell you that PCR is a kind of a reaction in which you can obtain multiple copies of your gene of interest under in vitro conditions. And for this purpose, what you have to do, because the experiment is done in laboratory conditions, so you have to supply all the things that is generally obtained by our gene of interest when it is inserted inside the host organism. So all of the conditions that is present in the host organism, you have to supply in the laboratory artificially. So for this purpose, we supply the solution, two sets of the primers, ready-made primers, and these primers are actually the small chemically synthesized oligonucleotides, and they have complementary bases to the regions of the DNA. And we also have to add the enzyme DNA polymerase here, because we have operate this machine PCR at very high voltage. So you know that whenever we supply heat to the solution, then as you know, the denaturation of the DNA takes place. So here we are not using an ordinary DNA polymerase. Here we used a special type of DNA polymerase enzyme, and that is known as Taq polymerase. So this Taq polymerase is obtained from such type of bacterium which is adapted to the high conditions of temperature, And the bacterium from which we obtain the Staph polymerase is a Thermus aquaticus. So student 2 mark question can be asked to you that which is the source of this Staph polymerase. Then you must know it is Thermus aquaticus, and the name of the polymerase enzyme here is Staph polymerase. Okay students, so how this technique work? So see the diagram on the next page. The first step is a denaturation. So when you apply heat to this solution, then the two fragments of the DNA, that is the two strands of the DNA, one has the polarity in the direction 3' to 5' and other in the direction 5' to 3', it opens. When a particular heat is applied to it, and this is known as a denaturation because we are doing the experiment in laboratory. Then after denaturation, as you know that we have mixed two sets of primers. So these respective primers, they attach themselves according to their complementary bases to the two strands of the parental recombinant DNA. Now what happened, we have also add the enzyme DNA polymerase, which is here the Taq polymerase. So this Taq polymerase enzyme do their activity. They put the different type of bases from the solution and read the bases that are present on the parental DNA, and in this way it do the extension of this primase strand. So in this way you can see the primer strands extension takes place, and if we repeat the same process 30 to 40 times or 30 cycles of this process is repeated, after that we have obtained 1 billion copies of our amplified DNA of interest. Yes student, our next step is, because we have done the amplification of our gene of interest or DNA of interest, now the next process is our recombinant DNAs are ready. So we have to insert this recombinant DNA into the host cell. You know very well, after ligation of the DNA, when they are introduced into the recipient cells are not ready to accept this DNA. So we have adopt different methods for making the host competent to receive this foreign DNA, which is the recombinant DNA we obtain by the technique of PCR. So what are the methods? So I have already discussed in my yesterday's lecture. Either you can treat the host cells by divalent calcium ions, and these divalent calcium ions, they produce pores in the cell wall, and through these pores your recombinant DNA enters. And second step is you have to incubate the host cells at extreme hot conditions or extreme cold conditions. So by torturing these host cells, they become ready to accept the recombinant DNA. And the third step is microinjection. You filled your recombinant DNA in a syringe or injection, and you inject this particular solution containing recombinant DNA into the nucleus of the host cell. And the fourth step is biolistic or gene gun. Here, the small bullets of gold and tungsten, they are coated with recombinant DNA suspension, and later they are fired from a gene gun which targets the nucleus of the host cell. And the last step here is the disarmament of the pathogenic vectors. We remove the pathogenic DNA material from the pathogens or plant pathogens, and here we insert our desired recombinant DNA, and in this way when these cells they cause infection, then your DNA it enters into the host cell. So all of these steps can be used for making the host competent to receive the DNA, recombinant DNA into it. Okay student, if you have transferred any antibiotic resistant gene, and suppose that antibiotic resistant gene is actually the ampicillin resistant gene, then you know that you can check the progeny cell of the host, whether the progeny cells they become the transformants or they are the non-transformants. So for this purpose we adopt the traditional method of plating of antibiotics. So here we make 3 plates ready on which we pour some agar-agar medium, and later we allow the growth of transformants and non-transformants over that plate. Then what happen if you have transferred the ampicillin resistant gene? So you see that the transformants, they show an easy growth over the Petri plate that contains ampicillin antibiotic, though they cannot grow over tetracycline Petri plate and streptomycin Petri plate. So in this way, you get an idea that so and so cells, they get transformed, uh, are having the new insert of antibiotic resistant gene, and these cells which are the non-transformants, they can be easily discarded by you. So in this way you allow the growth of only the transformants and discard the non-transformants from your solution. So here the ampicillin resistant gene in this case is known as the selectable marker. Yes, students, here the entire diagram is given you, that we have plasmid vector here, we have foreign DNA, which contains our genes of interest. Then we do the restriction endonuclease enzyme for cutting. And later on, the sealing is done by the DNA ligase enzyme. And then we do the process of transformation, where these enzymes, they enter into the E. coli bacterium. You can see very well that here your recombinant DNA, it enters into the this E. coli bacteria. And for checking the transformants, we do the plating of different antibiotics simultaneously and allow the transformants and non-transformants to go over them. So the transformants, which antibiotic resistant gene they contain, they can grow over that antibiotic. On rest of the antibiotics, they will not show any growth. In this way, you can easily find out that these cells are the transformants and these are the non-transformants. So allow the growth of the transformants and leave the or discard the non-transformant cells. Yes, student. Our next step is obtaining the foreign gene product. So as soon as your alien piece of DNA or your recombinant DNA, with the help of particular vector, it gets inserted in the host organism. And later, after a particular time period, your gene of interest, it gets expressed in the host organism. And after expression, it produces your desired protein. Now you know that the host cell, they have a particular rate of multiplication. And the desired protein, it is obtained in very small quantities. So in order to avoid this situation, you want to get more and more host cells, progeny cells, which contains your desired protein. So you isolate these host cells and put it over a culture medium, which is in the form of tons in very large vessels known as bioreactors. We provide all type of necessary optimum conditions of temperature, pressure, aerobic conditions, steams, air, everything in the bioreactors. Then what happens? Under optimum conditions, these host cells, they enjoy, they do more and more multiplication, they reproduce at a very large number. So in this way, so many host cells, they are later formed in the bioreactors, and as many host cells are there, as many replicas of your desired protein is there. So later on, what we have to do, you know very well, we isolate our desired protein from these host cells. As you know that this protein is formed in another organism. So the another organism is known as the heterologous host, and our protein, which is our protein of interest or desired protein, it is known as the recombinant protein, students. So in the last, what we have to do, we have to extract our recombinant protein. Here I have written all the description regarding this process, student. You go through it. And in the last, what we have to do, we have to extract our desired protein from these host cells. And after extraction, this extracted protein has to undergo so many applications regarding separation, purification, testing, and launching of the product. So this entire process is known as a downstream process. So here what we have to do, we extract the desired protein, and then we do the separation of this desired protein. As this desired protein is not in isolated form, it take another type of impurities with it. So we have to remove those additional molecules, and we obtain our desired protein by using various separation techniques, which we generally use for separation of chemicals in our chemistry. So after doing the separation techniques, we isolate our desired protein, and we also done the purification of this protein. then whatever be our desired product, it has to undergo certain testing procedure. If it is a drug, we do clinical test for this. We apply different doses of this drugs on some model organisms. It may be mice, monkey, rabbits. We increase the doses and then see the symptoms that develop in these model organisms. So in this way, when we get satisfied with the performance of our desired protein, whatever it may be some agrochemical, it may be antibiotics, it may be a drug, it may be some microbe, some enzyme. After thoroughly study this entire desired product, we launch the product in the market in a particular brand name. And we also add suitable preservative to our desired product. So in this way, we launch a new product in the market, and this entire process, which contains separation, purification, then testing and launching of the product, it is collectively known as a downstream process. Okay, student, here the role of bioreactor is very important. But in today's topic, I am not going to tell you more about bioreactors. I will take one separate lecture for this, that how these bioreactors, they play an important role in large scale production of our desired protein. Okay, student, I am quite hopeful that today's topic is very much clear to you. So go through your book, read the chapter carefully. And that's all in today's lecture, student. Have a nice day.